Okay, good evening, all. I am Tarun here. I am the host of your uh, webinar today, and on behalf of Anamify, I welcome you all. The topic of today's webinar is trust-based parenting for teenagers, and we look at ways to begin this with our kids. So, you know, before we get into the topic, let me start with the thought that whatever is happening, everything happens and begins inside of us. So whether it is thriving, abundance, any relationship, everything begins inside us, and it begins from within. And parenting is no different. And why we chose this topic? Because in our last webinar, one of the participants mentioned about parenting. And at that time, the issue raised was the addiction of the children with respect to screens. And while giving a small answer to the participant in that call, I mentioned about trust-based parenting. And from there, this idea germinated that let's have this session in detail to look at this topic of trust-based parenting. But before we go to that trust-based parenting, let us first look at what exactly we are doing or what we are experiencing rather. So, as I mentioned, that everything begins from inside of us, whether it is we are thriving or whether we are feeling abundance or whether there is any relationship, everything is begins from within. And if we look at our parents, what happens most of the time? They are fearful. As parents, they are fearful. So when the parent is fearing about the child, then the tactics which are used, the language that is used, that reflects something different. The behavior which is used also is different. The language which is used, that is also different. And what it is, because it is coming from the sphere of fear, so it is fearful. And that is what gets reflected in the tactics, in the language, in the behavior. So though as parents, we want to show love, but what actually gets manifested is the fear. And it is manifesting because it is the underlying feeling which the parent is actually experiencing. Now, then the question comes, where this fear is coming for the parents? And this is pretty straightforward. When we become parent, when the child is very small, then the child, a very small child, is fragile. And we get to hold the child in our hands, the fragile child, and it becomes pretty much fearful for us that we are handling the child, such a small, fragile child, in the right manner, in the safe manner, We are not hurting the child. So, there is also a saying that as you become parent, but the parent wears heart on the sleeve, because we see the baby is so small, and when they start moving little bit, they are growing, we are fearful that they shouldn't fall, they should hurt themselves. So in actually, we are fearful for the well-being of the child, of the baby. But this fear continues even when the baby grows. However, what we forget is, now the baby is grown a bit, we can decrease our fear. But that does not happen. Out of our habit of being fearful, that is what gets manifested in all our tactics, in all our language, in all our behavior. But if you observe today's child, earlier the child was not that confident, was not that expressive. But if you look at children of today's age, even some of the 3-year-olds, the way they express themselves today, they are so confident. They speak so clearly and they express themselves very clearly. So, as a parent, what we should have done or what we should do, that somehow is not happening in most of the cases. So, instead of providing support and withdrawing our fear and coming from the place of love, care, but the parent still operates most of the time because of this fearful way, which is, again, if you look at in some cases, is also coming from the parents' own insecurities or some of the parents' own experiences while when they were growing up and they were being brought up by their parents, the things which had happened to them, which they experienced, they try to model with their children also the same behavior, the same modeling. And what was the earlier model? It was fear-based parenting. You discipline the child by cane or by punishment. Why? Because you always had that thought being put in the mind, grilled by the society, grilled by everyone around us, that if we don't discipline the child will get spoiled. I think, let me narrate a small story, and then probably some of you can reflect on that story and give your reflections. So this is a story of Aditya. Aditya is a 13-year-old boy from a middle-class family in Pune. He came home one day clutching his report card. His hands trembled as he thought about the low grades in red ink underlined on the paper. He knew what was coming, and the fear in his chest grew heavier with every step towards the door. As soon as he entered his home, his mother noticed the report card in his hand and asked, "What happened? Let me see it," she demanded. Aditya hesitated, but handed it over. Mother's eyes scanned the page, and her expression quickly turned from curiosity to shock. Aditya, you failed in 2 subjects. What were you even doing all this time? Watching TV? Playing video games? I told you to focus on your studies, but you never listened, she shouted. Hearing the commotion, Aditya's father walked in. When he saw the report card, his face darkened. This is what we worked so hard for? To pay your school fees? Only for you to fail like this? What will people say when they find out my son failed? Do you want to embarrass us? Aditya stood there silently. His head was down. His parents continued their scolding, listing out all his failures. You are ruining your future. No more cricket for you. Forget about playing with friends. If this happens again, you will regret it. Aditya's father then added, from now on, no TV, no phone, no friends. You will study all day. We'll send you to tuitions every evening. We have to fix this. As the night went on, Aditya locked himself in his room, tears streaming down his face. He felt like a failure, not just in school, but in the eyes of the people he loved the most. Instead of feeling motivated to improve, he just felt ashamed, trapped, and anxious about the future. So I'll stop for a moment and I'll ask, how many of you can relate to this story? And if you have any comment at this point of time. Anyone? If not, then I'll go on further. Okay. Now, let us look at it. What is the impact of the fear-based parenting in such a situation? It leads to shame and low self-worth. When Aditya is criticized, the constant criticism makes children internalize the belief that their worth depends solely on achievements. Then Aditya feels the fear. And what is that fear? The fear of communication. Children will stop sharing their struggles, fearing judgments or punishment from the parents or the caregivers. What else? It leads to anxiety and burnout also. The excessive pressure leads to stress, which can harm the mental health and reduces the performance further. What more? Loss of trust. Instead of feeling supported, the children see their parents as disciplinarians rather than allies. This is one case where we saw 13-year-old Aditya coming with his report card and having flunked in 2 subjects, how his parents behaved as they are practicing the usual fear-based parenting. Let us take another case. Let's this time talk about Neha. Neha is a 14-year-old from Delhi. And she was always a bright student. Her parents took great pride in her academic achievements, often boasting about her marks at family gatherings. But as she grew older, the pressure to perform began to weigh on her. One evening, Neha came home from school looking anxious. Her mother noticed, but didn't say much until after dinner. "What's wrong, Neha? You are barely touched your food," her mother asked. Neha hesitated, but finally mumbled, "I don't think I'll do well in tomorrow's maths test." Her father, who was overhearing, put down his newspaper and frowned. "What do you mean you won't do well? How many hours have you studied today? Do you know how much we have sacrificed to give you a good education? You better get at least 90%. Neha's heart sank. Instead of finding support, she felt more stressed. She spent the night trying to cram, tears streaming down her face, afraid of what her parents might say if she didn't meet their expectations. And next day, during the test, Neha froze. She knew the answers, but couldn't focus. Her mind was replaying her father's words over and over. You better get at least 90%. And when the results came, Neha had scored much lower than usual. At home, her father was furious. "What happened to you? How could you let this happen?" Neha didn't have the courage to explain. Over time, she became more withdrawn, fearing her parents' reactions whenever she faced challenges. Instead of trying new things or asking for help, she started avoiding risks altogether, afraid of failure and judgment. So let us look, in this case, what are the ill effects? The fear-based parenting which Neha's parents did, while was often while was well-intentioned, but it stifled the child's confidence as well as growth. Instead of seeing Neha, her parents, as a source of comfort and guidance, Neha started associating them with anxiety and criticism. And over time, this fear had the potential that it could have damaged Neha's self-esteem, create a fear of failure, leading to avoidance of challenges, or hinder open communication, as children fear judgment instead of finding support. So, with these two examples of Aditya and Neha, I'm sure that we have seen now the ill effects of fear-based parenting, what exactly it does. And nowadays, there are things which are not very encouraging. In school, the teens, they experience many different things because of their age also. The teenagers are navigating their rapid changes in their body, and they are also at times craving for independence. This is a reality for teenagers. And they often want to test boundaries to assert their individuality. This is what is going on in their minds. And misunderstanding during this phase can lead to conflicts and mistrust. As we saw in these two cases, though well-intentioned, but how it was landing, how it was being. So far, both Aditya as well as Neha, how they are exactly feeling and how they are experiencing it in their mind. and what kind of impact it is happening. So, what is the way out? Okay, just before that, let us for a moment also spend a couple of more moments on this fear-based parenting before we go to trust-based parenting. So exactly, if you look at the behavior of the parents, what is actually happening? Though they are coming from their well intentions, but what exactly is happening in this case? Both cases we saw, the parents lose their cool. They react. They do not respond. There is a minor, before the reaction comes, there is a small time gap. At that time, if the parents have thought through what they are speaking and how it will be landed, probably it will be different. But what is actually happening? Because of this fear which we saw, the manifestation of the fear comes in the form of these reactions. And instantly, parents come in the state of worry. And that worry becomes anger and frustration. And then they thought through in their own minds by this, whirlpool of anger and frustration, the worst case scenario for the child. And then the words which come out, तुम तो निकम्मे हो, तुम तो नालायक हो, अब क्या होगा तुम्हारा? ओ माय गॉड, हमारे नेबर्स के बच्चों को देखो. And all sorts of things parents do. But what is happening on the child's mental health? We saw the wounds getting created, damaging the self-esteem, creating fear of failure, avoiding challenges, hindering the communications, anxiety, burnout, loss of trust, fear of communication, shame, low self-worth. So now, what is the way out? And the way out is that this is not the right way to behave. What is the right way to behave? The right way to behave is trust-based parenting. So, before I go to the trust-based parenting, let us first talk about trust in this particular relationship of parent and the teen. Trust is the foundation of a very strong parent-teen relationship. Why? Because it fosters open communication, mutual respect, and accountability, if exhibited by both parents and the children. A parent trusting their teenager to manage their own whatever situation they are dealing with will lead to better self-regulation than constant monitoring from the parents. And as we saw in the beginning of the call, the most common fear the parent has today is teens spending too much time in front of screen. So a parent trusting their teenager to manage their own screen time can lead to better self-regulation than constant monitoring. That is the trust we are talking about. Let's expand it further. So as we saw some time back, that teenagers have their own challenges during these growing up days because they are navigating rapid changes in their body, they are craving for independence, they are often testing their boundaries to assert their individualities. And sometimes misunderstanding during this phase can lead to conflict and mistrust. Before we go to the principles of trust-based parenting, let us see if a parent understands their children and exhibits the trust-based parenting, how exactly he'll be speaking. Instead of nalayak ho, nikamme ho, instead of criticizing a teenager for staying up late, for example, consider if the parent start discussing the importance of rest and then ask their children as to why they were feeling the need to stay up for so much long and discussing that. So let us look at what are some of the other principles of trust-based parenting are. One is the transparency. Transparency where the parents have to be honest about the expectations and the reasoning. So common examples can be if certain rules are imposed, like curfew times, then children need to be taken into confidence and explained why they are important. Another thing is consistency. Consistency that if parents promise a reward for good behavior of the children, then they should definitely stick to it and ensure that they deliver. Because follow through on promises and consequences will only build the credibility. So from consistency perspective, over and above transparency, consistency is also very much important. Next, 2 points are on empathy and activity. Let's look at empathy first. Empathy is when the parents show their care about the feelings and opinions of the child. And instead of asking probing questions, they ask open-ended questions. For example, if the child says, I went for a movie, then parents should not start reacting. Why did you go? Why did not you study? What will happen? Boards are nearby. You are going to spend all your time doing all these things. Instead of that, if you ask the child, so what did you like the most in the movie? And what was it that you were looking for? Then probably the child will open up. But if he sees his parents in accusatory tone, he'll close up. Another principle I want to talk about before I open up the discussion is about activity. Sometimes, it is important that parents have to understand the needs of the teenagers. For example, if the teenager wants to go for a late night party, then the parent should respond empathetically. But at the same time, they should set the boundaries. and talk about the importance of those boundaries. So these are some of the points which probably, now that you got a small glimpse of what trust-based parenting principles and what exactly it is, vis-a-vis how the traditional fear-based parenting, which we have seen being, experienced all through and most of the times. So at this moment, I will stop and I'll open up the floor for discussions. So if you have any point, please raise your hands and then unmute yourself and then can speak. Anyone? Yeah, Kilan.
Good evening, Tarun. I think you put it very nicely. I think the cases of both that Aditya and Neha.
Neha.
That's very good explanation. I just have one point. I just wanted to know if we can incorporate a hybrid model, like one parent playing the role of fear based, the other one playing the role of trust based. Means fear based in the sense not too much of discouragement, at least to keep a check, so that it should not be let loose or something like that. The other parent, for example, the father can be strict and the mother can be okay. Don't worry, we will definitely do that. Because now what's happening is, suppose if the student scores low marks, then possibly the other next step is that they will ask they will ask him to meet the class teacher and the school. So then possibly the parents have to go prepared, like what has gone wrong, because they start complaining about him, what and all, he is not attentive, or he is too much playful, something like that. He's not focusing, so he's not observing. So much of complaints they will start raising, and they definitely, that also will trigger a lot of these kind of issues like fear based. It will have its own repercussions. So will that not do like one plays the role of fear based and the other one trust based? It's just a question I have.
Yeah, so Akilan, my quick answer to your reflection is, actually it is happening today also. If you look at the role the mother plays and the role the father plays, is exactly this. One plays the good cop and one plays the bad cop. And sometimes for small offenses, mother even does not disclose to the father, because she understands that if she tells something to father, how father is going to explode, react, and behave. And then what drama will happen. So even today also, Akilan, this is happening in our society. No different. And we have many mothers here and we have many fathers here.
Yeah.
We can
In fact,
do
I was
quick,
I was also for the sorry.
So how old is your children?
No, I was a father. No, I'm a father of two girls, but anyhow, they are grown up, and but of course, whatever you said about this teenage, I think that's where your the body starts growing rapidly, and they will have that all kind of that energy. They will be filled with energy, and yeah, definitely, it's kind of it's a kind of the transitioning from child to the youthhood. So it's really difficult to control their emotions. Also, sometimes they get flared up, and yeah, I think you listed a lot of points on that, like setting up the boundaries. Suppose if they want to go for a party with their friends, setting up the boundary and encourage them, like asking open-ended questions. Yeah, it's it's really in fact it's a very sensitive subject, and it's a very tough situation to handle, especially the teenage children. And if they are, if it is twins, if they are twins, it's really difficult, all the more difficult. But if there is a kind of age gap between the two, yes, of course, the one will be supporting the other. So that's not a problem. So, but again, it's if they are very close in their ages, so that will also create a lot of issues. But this is just one thought that yeah, you mentioned that this is happening nowadays also in the society. There's one plays the role of fear-based and the one plays the role of trust-based. I don't know. So, but again, if both plays the
Okay,
role.
𝗟𝗃𝗲𝗓, give me another 10 minutes and I will again return to you. Let me narrate 2 more stories. So then the point which I'm trying to make probably will become more clearer.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for giving opportunity to speak. So let us hear it out from others also. Thank you.
Sure, sure. So before I proceed to others, let me narrate a couple of more stories to make this little more insightful now that Akilan has mentioned about the hybrid model. So let us see what is the best way to go forward. Let's talk about Rohan. Rohan is an 18-year-old from Bangalore. He was excited about getting his learner license. He had been pestering his parents for months to let him ride their scooter to college. His father, like many Indian parents, was cautious. Rohan, I trust you, but the roads are unsafe. You don't have enough experience, his father would say, ending the conversation. One evening after dinner, Rohan finally said, Papa, can we talk about this calmly? I promise to hear you out if you hear me too. This simple request surprised his father. They sat down, and for the first time, Rohan explained why it mattered so much to him. I feel like you don't trust me to handle things on my own. I understand your concern, but I want to prove that I am responsible. Let me start with short rides nearby, and then you can guide me at every step. This made his father pause. He realized Rohan wasn't just asking for permission to ride a scooter. He was asking for trust. Over the next week, they worked out a plan. Rohan practiced with his father every morning in their colony. Slowly, he earned the freedom to ride to college, and as weeks passed, his father saw how responsible he had become. The turning point wasn't just the riding lessons. It was the moment they sat down, listened to each other, and built trust. So this story highlights a universal truth. Teenagers seek trust and responsibility, but they also need guidance and support. Trust-based parenting isn't about letting go completely. It's about creating a bridge of understanding. When we pause, listen, and involve them in decisions, it nurtures trust, builds confidence, and strengthens the relationship. Now let us take the case of, Aditya report card. Same scenario. If instead of reacting, if the parents would have given their reaction, instead of giving reactions, the parents would have responded basis trust-based parenting, what would have happened? Imagine if Aditya parents had made Aditya sat down calmly and asked, Aditya, what happened? Were the exams too hard? How can we help you to do better next time? Imagine what would have happened to Aditya. In 99% of the cases, Aditya would have cried because he would be feeling so shameful inside that he was just waiting for that moment where his vulnerability gates get opened and he start expressing. And he would have said, oh, I prepared for this thing. I did not prepare for that. This happened or that happened. And this is how it resulted. Further, let's consider if Aditya parents had focused on understanding his challenges instead of shaming him. And if they would have encouraged the efforts and looked for improvement rather than perfection. Now, these are some of the steps probably in the trust-based parenting, which probably, if we are so used to be practicing fear-based parenting, if we move to trust-based parenting, it will take time. Things won't happen so quickly. Results won't happen so quickly. The children's performance will improve, but it will not improve dramatically. So at that time, as a parent, we have to show our encouragement to the child, even if he improves by few percentages, by few marks. Instead of saying, I am expecting 90% and you have scored 89%, what happened to you? Or if the child has secured second rank, accusing him, why didn't you study hard? You should have topped. You should have come first. I'm sure by now you would have understood that by creating a safe and supportive environment, parents can help their children learn from their mistakes, take responsibility, and grow resilience in the face of challenges. And that is what the prime message of today's talk is. That teenagers always are seeking trust and responsibility. It's parents' responsibility how they have to respond. Yeah, Kelly, go on.
Yeah, see, another point which I just thought, but I can possibly subject to discussion. So instead of, see now, since as teenagers, they will always be having, they will be quite energetic and then they will always be having this enthusiasm or motivation. So sometimes even allowing them to fail, but not fail in the sense completely, that's not a complete failure. Even allowing them to fail also will make them feel that, okay, this is not how we should do. It's kind of a lessons learned for them. So and then mentoring them or coaching them, okay, this is how you should do, you have to do it like this. So that they're entrusting them that, okay, this is how you have to do it. So that also will help. Like it's kind of putting them to test, like you push someone in the swimming pool and then ask instead of if you find that they are quite potent, they have a huge potential. And another point which I would like to make, possibly this is, I think this also will not stop with parenting, even in the business scenario also, that when managing a team, so that also will, lot of things will come. Suppose we do some portion of the project and then the team has failed miserably. So we take the responsibility and then give them the improvement areas, identify the areas of improvement, do the root cause analysis, then and motivating them to perform, at least in the next project, carry forward the lessons learned and then see that it doesn't repeat in the next project. So this not only applies to parenting, but it also applies to your business, the day-to-day business also.
Absolutely. Akhil, you are right. You are absolutely right. And what you said, I totally agree. That the parenting, the same father, the way he behaves at home in his parenting style, and when he is boss and he has his subordinates, he will behave almost in the similar fashion. So there are lots of cross learnings from both sides. And that is where we talked about those soft skills and the values. Right. Anybody else? Any more reflections? Any other comments? So, trust always strengthens relationships and fosters growth and prepares teenagers for life's challenges. And I would go on to say that trust is like a tree. When nurtured with care and patience, it grows strong and provides shelter for generations. So let's commit to planting and nurturing this tree in our families. That reminds me of another, small story. This is story of my niece. Today she is grown up, and recently I met her, and she was recognized for being the top teacher in her district. And she thanked me and she said, "Uncle, I want to thank you for having helped me, because I have received this Best Teacher Award for the third time." Yeah, Kilan, I will come to you a little late. Let me finish. And while thanking, she also reminded me of an occasion when I remember when she was a small kid, she was not willing to go to school. And when I asked why she doesn't want to go to school from her mother, my sister, she said that she is very scared. And she says, "I'm not going to school because people there are teasing me. They are pulling me down. I can't take it." And then what she did was she went to the kitchen and brought a knife. She said, "Kill me, but I am not going to go to school." Seeing this, I was at that time quite alarmed. I signed my sister to go away and said, "I'll handle it." So I asked my niece to come near me, and I bent down and I looked at her and she looked at me. I said to her, "Do you know how beautiful you are? If you don't believe, go and check in the mirror." My small niece, she went to the mirror, wiped her eyes, looked like she couldn't believe, but then she came back and nodded her head. "Yes, I am beautiful." Then again, I looked at her eyes and I said, "There are people who in this world would come and would like to would attack you, but you should know when to stop them. So tomorrow, when we go to the school, you look at the person who speaks badly to you, stop them there itself and speak to them very politely. Tell them, 'I thought you are a very good friend. I was respecting you. But you talk like this, that's very bad.' Don't ever do that. So once you have, spoken to the children like this, you come back and tell me what happened. So next day when I met her, she said she was happy. She said, it works very well. I said, okay. Now, before going to school, you write these 2 lines. I am a good girl. Nobody in this whole world can put me down. These 2 sentences, before going to school, always read. And then when you go to school, try to help everybody. Try to say hello to everybody. And if there is someone who is crying, go and hug them. Talk to them. Show your love. And within a month, she was beaming with confidence. She had so many friends. When she used to go around in the school, people used to stop her. And they used to say, hey, I want to be friends with you. And she would say, yes, you are my friend. And very confidently, she'll walk forward. That's what a small encouragement, a small confidence building measure can do to a child. Yeah. Now I'll stop talking and I'll take comments or questions. Anyone? Yeah, Akilan, go on.
Tarun, you mentioned about this trust-based parenting. Okay, we motivate or we encourage them or we will tell them so that we'll sit with them and then get that kind of trust, give that kind of trust to them. But even in spite of all these things, still the student fails to rise up to the occasion. So how do we address that? It will not happen, sure, but still we find that, okay, there are gaps. How do we, how to address that? It may happen anytime, like possibly to anyone. Like I'm
So, Akilan, if you ask the same question to the parents, and if suppose you are sitting along with parents, and let us talk in this forum itself, we all are parents, right? Many of us would have failed. Many of us would have got a re-examination or compartment or etiquette or whatever. But still, did it affect the life where we have reached? That's the question. That's a very broad question we have to ask. So what you said in the beginning, Akilan, the hybrid model, and that's what we saw in the story of Rohan. That is the model that trust-based parenting is alluding to. It is like, Akilan, you have seen a earthen pot being made by a potter.
Yeah. He will keep that clay in that in the center of that, and then he will rotate that wheel, and then slowly he will just mold it to the desired shape. Yeah.
And then what he does? He
Then
puts one hand inside and taps
correct.
from the outside.
Correct. Yeah.
If you would not have held the hand from inside, do you think the pot would have ever become round?
No.
That's what we also do, right?
Mm.
The masculine and the feminine energy, both are required for human development, for the teenage development, for the child development, for all of ours development. And that's what in spirituality, what we called equipoise, equanimity.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Be in the observer mode, Akilan.
Mm.
Be a drashta, not drishya. Be an observer. Observe it like a drama which is unfolding in front of you. Look at it from non-judgmental space. Akhil. That's what the potter also do. Then only he gets the pot. Great. Anybody else has any other questions? Yeah, CP, go on.
Yes, what I wanted to ask was, we were talking about both masculine and feminine energies are required for for a proper development of a child. So what happens when we do single parenting? Because I am a single parent, I don't have a father figure for my son around. So how will he get how should I balance both masculine and feminine energy for him?
Yeah, very good question, CP. So actually, in a way, it's you have to do both. Sometimes you have to be a good cop, sometimes you have to be a bad cop. And again, you
Okay.
have to show your sensitivity. You
Yes.
have to
Yes.
see when is the time the child requires nurturing, and when is the time when a strong message needs to go for his discipline. When is the time when you have to assert that boundary, that this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. For example, in the beginning of the call, we talked about, you know, children manage, spending too much time in front of screen. But then we also have to understand that this is not 20 years, 30 years, 40 years back when we had no screen. Actually, in our lives, the screen came, I remember in the year 1982, when the Asian game came. At that time, TV started coming up in a significant manner, at least in some middle class households. Prior to that, it was only radio. And today, if you look at it, the children today, they are learning everything on their tabs, on their computer, on their phones. But then can we just say, don't use any of this? No. At that time, what we have to do is we have to build a relationship of trust. We have to create an environment where the kid feels comfortable discussing about screen time, for example. And we have to come from the space of empathy and understanding. That we know that in terms of social connection and schoolwork, the digital devices are required. So now we have to gently guide them towards healthier habits. And sometimes we have to sit with the child. And at that time, we have to express about imposing the limits, the time sets, time limits for regulation. And we have to talk to them about self-monitoring and regulating their own screen use by using apps or settings. And telling them that we don't want to control them, but this is a tool to help them. And we should also talk about the impact the screen addiction does. And for that, we have to lead by example, by being a role model for balanced screen use. Because teens are more likely to adopt healthier behaviors if they see their parents practicing the same principles. So same principles, I would say, CP, goes for both masculine and feminine I was referring to, alluding to. So different strokes for different folks, depending on the circumstance, you have to give that stroke. You got your answer,
Okay.
CP?
Yes, yes, I got it, Tarun. I think at this point of time, I am conscious enough to, being able to judge well that where I need to be nurturing and where I need to put a boundary around him. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Parth, go ahead.
नमस्ते। जिस
Namaskar.
जैसे हम बैकग्राउंड में कॉमिक्स पढ़ते थे ना नोटबुक्स के अंदर, अब बच्चे
Hmm,
मोबाइल्स रखते हैं और उसमें बैकग्राउंड में दूसरा कोई ऐसा ऐप चल रहा होता है, जो मतलब कि पेरेंट्स सोच भी नहीं सकते हैं।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। पर
चैनल
वो तो
छोड़
होगा ना।
आउट करें।
आपने भी किया था, इन वन वे और दी अदर। मैंने तो
नहीं,
किया था।
नहीं करा, लेकिन जो मेरे आस-पास के लोग थे वो कर रहे थे।
Correct, correct. तो उस टाइम भी होता था, ऐसा नहीं है कि नहीं होता था, होता तो था, तब भी होता था। बट द पॉइंट विच यू आर सेइंग, आई एग्री. So what to do when we observe this kind of behavior? And you know, I would say non-intrusive monitoring. Let your teen know that you will occasionally be checking their screen time, and you will be checking them also. And this should be framed as an accountability measure, not to invade their privacy. तो उसको आपको बच्चे को सामने बिठाना पड़ेगा, उसको समझाना पड़ेगा एडल्ट टू एडल्ट कम्युनिकेशन में कि मैं जो तुम्हारे साथ कर रही हूं वो तुम्हारी प्रिवेसी को इन्वेड करने की कोशिश नहीं है, पर मैं तुम्हें सिखाना चाहती हूँ कि हेल्दी हैबिट्स कैसे डेवलप होंगी, और उसके लिए मैं तुम्हारे साथ कोलैबोरेट कर रही हूँ, पार्टनरशिप कर रही हूँ टू बिकम योर अकाउंटेबिलिटी बडी, कि ताकि तुम अगर कहीं भी डेविएट करते हो तो मैं तुम्हें गाइड करूंगी। और ये मैं अपने लिए नहीं कर रही, ये मैं तुम्हारे लिए कर रही हूँ, और तुम्हारे लिए इसलिए कर रही हूँ, एंड देन यू कैन गो ऑन एंड ऑन। यू गॉट सम क्लू?
यस सर, एक मेरा चैलेंज है कॉन्फ्लिक्ट रेज़ोल्यूशन बच्चों के बीच में, 2 बच्चों के बीच में, वो रिमोट के लिए लड़ते हैं या फिर मोबाइल के लिए लड़ते हैं।
फर्स्ट क्लास। उसके लिए 2-3 ट्रिक्स हैं। क्या क्या एज है दोनों की?
वन इज़ ऑफ 7 इयर्स एंड वन इज़ ऑफ 13।
और दोनों बॉयज हैं, दोनों गर्ल्स हैं?
एक एक गर्ल है, बिग गर्ल एंड अदर इज़ बॉय।
अब आपको जो है वहां पे यू हैव टू प्ले सम ट्रिक्स. द ट्रिक इज दैट यू हैव टू कम आउट विद सम रूल, और वो रूल बनाना पड़ेगा ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ इक्वालिटी, ताकि ऐसा नहीं हो कि किसी को लगे कि आप किसी की साइड ले रहे हो. एंड यू हैव टू सेट टाइम कि आधा घंटा रिमोट उसके पास रहेगा, आधा घंटा रिमोट उसके पास रहेगा. आधा घंटे के लिए वो एक्सप्रेस करेगा कि उसे क्या देखना है, और आधे घंटे के लिए ये एक्सप्रेस करेगा कि उसे क्या देखना है. और फिर बीच बीच में आप इवन फर्दर यू कैन बी लिटिल मोर क्रिएटिव, एंड यू कैन थिंक ऑफ looking at the time. If you can, schedule their breaks in such a manner that they don't come together, if that helps initially. But later on, this is what you have to do.
जो मेरा बेटा
Yeah.
है वो तो सबके साथ देखता है, वो पापा के साथ भी देखता है, सिस्टर के साथ भी देखता है, अपना टाइम भी देखता है, तो उसके तो 3-4 घंटे हो जाते हैं।
हाँ, तो वो भी गलत है ना. एक्सेसिव स्क्रीन टाइम तो गड़बड़ है. तो वहां पे आपको थोड़े से, जो हमने बाउंड्री की बात की ना, तो बाउंड्री इज दैट ओनली, बिकॉज it has got many ill effects. I'm sure that you know it much more than me.
यस। तो बच्चे आजकल क्या करते हैं, गूगल खोलते हैं और उसको कॉपी कर देते हैं सारे आंसर्स, क्योंकि इज़िली एक्सेस है। वो अपना माइंड ही नहीं यूज़ करते अब।
नहीं, अभी तो एप्स आ गई हैं. इवन टीचर्स हैव बिकम strong. They can assess because there are apps now which can tell whether this is a AI answer, Google answer, or whether it is a genuine answer answered by the child. So वो तो धीरे धीरे सब जगह it is, the news is tightening. Yeah.
सर
Anybody else?
सर
हाँ
मेरा
बोलिए.
एक क्वेश्चन है।
हाँ बोलिए.
सर मेरी रात को डॉटर 9 o'clock के बाद कई बारी बोलती है कि मुझे स्टेशनरी का सामान लाना है, और मुझे फियर होता है उसको बाहर अकेले भेजने में। तो इनसिक्योरिटी को मैं कैसे ओवरकम करूँ?
तो आप अपना टाइम याद करो, when you were of that age and when you had said the same thing to your parent. Did you ever say the same thing to your parent?
सर मैंने कहा था, लेकिन हमें एसेस नहीं मिला था। हम लोग को डाँट देते थे वो।
Exactly. तो वहां पे जो मॉडल उस टाइम पे यूज हो रहा था वो था फियर बेस्ड पेरेंटिंग वाला. पर अब जो हो रहा है वो इतना लैक्स हो गया है कि यहाँ पे वी हैव एक्चुअली गिवन टू मच लीवे. और वो जो अकिलन और हम लोग जब बात कर रहे थे तो वो जो हाइब्रिड मॉडल की बात कर रहे थे वो एक्चुअली में हम इसी की बात कर रहे थे कि वी हैव टू कीप द डिसिप्लिन इंटैक्ट. एट द सेम टाइम वी हैव टू आल्सो नॉट बी सो स्ट्रिक्ट कि बच्चा जो है ही स्टार्ट फीलिंग सफोकेट. तो यहाँ पे आपको जो है
कंडीशनिंग है, वो जेंडर डिफरेंस आ गया। अगर वो लड़का होता तो मैं भेज देती हूँ उसको। अब बीइंग अ गर्ल चाइल्ड, मैं उसकी सेफ्टी के लिए कंसर्न्ड हूँ, तो मैं उसको दिन में भेज देती हूँ, लेकिन रात को भेजने में मुझे दिक्कत महसूस होती है।
बिल्कुल. तो आप उस केस में थोड़े से क्रिएटिव सॉल्यूशन यूज कर सकती हैं. वो किस तरह से? या तो आप कोई फैमिली मेंबर उनको अकम्पनी करे. दूसरा, आप अपनी डॉटर के साथ जो है एक एडल्ट टू एडल्ट कम्युनिकेशन करें जिसमें आप एग्जैक्टली बताएं कि दिस इज व्हाट योर फियर इज एंड दैट इज वेयर यू आर कमिंग फ्रॉम एंड दैट इज व्हाई यू डोंट अप्रिशिएट. सो उससे क्या होगा कि आगे से एक टाइम के बाद शी विल हेजिटेट टू आस्क फॉर द सेम परमिशन क्योंकि आपने बाउंड्री सेट कर दी. तीसरा, you can use the quick apps which are nowadays available who can give you the stationery at your home if you order online. These are some of the options you can choose. Yeah. Did I answer your question? I think she is facing some. You are on mute if you are talking.
सर आई एम पासिंग फियर टू माय चाइल्ड, जो कि वो एक्सपैंड करेगी अपने माइंड में।
बिल्कुल. तो इसीलिए आपको वो फियर नहीं करना है. इसीलिए मैंने आपको बोला कि एडल्ट टू एडल्ट कम्युनिकेशन होगा तो उसमें फियर नहीं होगा, उसमें आपकी कंसर्न होगी, उसमें आपकी हेल्दी इंटेंशन होगी. Are you getting?
यस।
And that is what you have to practice. And in case you need some help, professional help, you can contact us. We can always work with you and can guide you. Yeah.
ओके।
Anybody else has any other comment? So I see Prakash, you are joined. You have any reflection today, Prakash? Okay, I think he's not in a position to speak. So, Anamika, any other comment, Prerna, from your side? Anything you want to say?
Just one thing. I'll say, Tarun, which I have observed. So I'm not a parent yet, but I have a lot of parents at my house, and I keep observing them with children, my friends, and how they, I call my friends, and उनके छोटे छोटे बच्चे हैं, वो उनके साथ लगे रहते हैं, और I keep observing their interactions, and I talk to a lot of mothers. तो एक चीज मुझे ये फील हुई है इस पूरे प्रोसेस में कि हम we cannot raise empowered children if we don't empower ourselves.
True.
So
Very true.
before we actually work on our own fears and insecurities and heal from those fears and insecurities, तब तक चाहे हम कितनी भी कोशिश कर लें, and even if we try to mitigate these things, अंदर तो fear और insecurity बनी हुई है, तो वो कहीं ना कहीं किसी ना किसी तरीके से निकल कर आ ही जाती है. Right. So I see, people in my family or my friends जिनसे ज्यादा इस टॉपिक में इंटरेक्शन होता है, तो ऐसा नहीं है कि उनको ये सारी चीजें समझ में नहीं आती. I was just recently talking to one of my friends. She has 2 small girl childs, and वो बोल भी रही है, उसको पता भी है कि I am aware that I'm just frustrated or I'm just so unsatisfied in my relationship that वो गुस्सा बच्चों पे निकल जाता है. Small children like 3, 5 kind of. वो उन पे निकल जाता है, एंड देन जो मेरी बड़ी बेटी है, शी फील्स वेरी इनसिक्योर, क्योंकि मैं छोटी वाली पे ज्यादा ध्यान देती हूँ, एंड मैं ये बुक्स पढ़ रही हूँ, मैं ये चीजें कर रही हूँ, और मैं समझती हूँ. तो सब समझ के लेवल पे तो सब कुछ चल रहा है, बट उसका ध्यान इस चीज पे नहीं जा रहा है. इवन दो आई ट्राइड hinting it a little bit to her कि it's not just about reading books, it's about you need to look at something, why your relationship is not right with your partner, what's happening in your own life. But हम बहुत ही ना इन सारी चीजों को कई बार एक टनल व्यू से देखने लगते हैं कि as if it's just you and your relationship with the child, but it's many different factors, and about what is happening in our life, which also impacts our interaction and relationship with our children. तो इसके लिए सेल्फ अवेयरनेस एंड वर्किंग ऑन वन सेल्फ, वो तो मतलब लिटरली बिकम्स अ बेसिक फर्स्ट हैंड फाउंडेशन. तो दैट along with of course learning about all of these things, and फिर उसके बाद उसको अप्लाई करना और ये सारी चीजें, then both of these things need to go together. So yeah, that's just an observation.
Yeah, thanks, Anamika. You made very pertinent points. Thanks for that. Yeah, Prakash.
Tarun, thanks. I think the topic is extremely sensitive, delicate, and I don't think, this is a topic probably we have been, the society has been discussing for, I would say, quite a period of time, especially over the last maybe a decade or so. And it's going to be more and more important as the society becomes a little bit more complex. More so because today there are many diversions, as you rightly said. But I think the most important thing I would say, as parents, and while some of us have evolved over a period of time, parenthood also is an evolution, is to first accept that the child is an individual of its own. It is not a toy. It is not a robot. It is not something on which you can manifest what you want to say, what you want to do. So I think it is very important, first and foremost, to accept that it is an individual. And being an individual, it will have its strengths, its weaknesses. And being an individual, it will have its likes and dislikes. Yes, it's very important that what is most, in my view, what is most important is to probably ensure that the child becomes a good human being, because that's the basis of which the foundation of life goes forward. And the child then accepts, becomes fearless in trusting and in its parents, the people around. It also starts taking those kind of, and it will make mistakes. Of course, all of us will make mistakes. There is nothing that comes. In fact, historically, if you look at, you make 10 mistakes to get something right. So I think all of us have to accept. We have all grown like that. So it is an evolution, and I don't think something can, it is not something that we can expect that the child will be perfect from day one. No child is going to be perfect. It's a journey. The child will continue. It will become more and more confident when it knows that the parents and the family are there to support, and that's where you exactly hit the nail on trust-based parenting. I think that is very important. And the child should have the trust to come and discuss openly whatever its problems are, and should have the confidence that together with the family, with the parents, it will be able to find a solution. I think, to my mind, that's the key of what I would say.
Yeah, thanks, Prakash. Very important perspectives you brought forward. And that's the key message, I would say, again, that if, as a parent, if we have raised the child, that child comes at any point of time, and he has the confidence that at any point of time I can go to the parents and we can jointly look at the situation and respond. Very true, very true. And just to let everybody know, Prakash is a very senior corporate leader. I respect him a lot because what he has achieved in his corporate journey also is very profound. So thanks, Prakash, for sparing your time, and also thanks for sharing your nuggets. Thanks again.
Pleasure was mine, Tarun.
Thanks, Prakash. Akhil and I will come to you. Let's hear Prerna first. Yeah, Prerna.
Hi, Tarunji. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay. Yeah, it was a really nice session. And because all of your stories had different names, Neha and Rohan, and also I think it's easier now to remember the pain point in every story, and how the parent, what would have been the ideal response. So I really liked the way that you put these messages across. So since I'm not a parent, myself, I did not participate in, from the beginning of the conversation, but very recently I remember somebody asking me for some advice on parenting. So the guy, he shared with me like this, that there is a girl in his, daughter's class, and that girl is into the habit of, taking gifts from the boys of the other section in return for, basically she's more like a, she makes matches between the girls and boys. तो वो लोगों का relationship वो बनाती है. तो lot of boys, they bribe her with gifts की, I want to talk to this girl, I want to take this girl out for a date. And this is in high school, this is happening in high school. So he said that my daughter, unfortunately, is this girl's best friend. So now my daughter is aware कि उसकी best friend ऐसे ऐसे करती है, and she comes and tells me, and she laughs about it. But now I feel very protective about my daughter being friends with a child like this, and I don't want her to be friends with this girl, because I feel that this can pose some kind of danger. But how do I tell her? How do I tell her that I don't feel safe you hanging around with the that girl? So I, first of all, appreciated him that he did not straight away impose his beliefs and his values, and he took some time out to think about it, because that would ideally strain the relationship if he had, directly told her. And I also realized when you went on mentioning the difference between fear-based parenting and trust-based parenting, that in his case, ideally the daughter had some trust, that she came and confided such a thing to her father also, कि मेरे क्लास में एक लड़की है, वो मेरी बेस्ट फ्रेंड है, वो ऐसे ऐसे करती है. So I think, yes, so she did not fear telling all these things to her father. She was very comfortable telling. So now the ball was in the father's court, that my child has trusted me. And now what do you do with that trust? Now how do you nurture the trust that, his teenage daughter now has given him. So that was the whole thing कि यहाँ पे trust है भी, but अब उसको maintain करना है और उसको grow भी करना है. So when you actually brought out this, so I realized I was trying to understand, okay, so these were the elements which were already present in that relationship, but still he was, feeling not very comfortable with the situation. And I also remember, giving him the advice that when you raise a child, you're not raising a clone. Just like, Mr. Prakash rightly put, that they are an individual. And since now every child is unique and their stories also will be unique. So I think some amount of trial and error will happen in, giving them guidance. So there may not be like a single rule out there कि आपको ऐसे ही बोलना है. So because everybody knows their child the best. So I told him कि you can, if she has trusted you so much that she has come and told you something like this, you can, just try to tell her your fear and then ultimately leave the decision with her. क्योंकि ultimately that's not how real life works कि अगर आपका किसी के साथ बन नहीं रहा है, you just immediately, stop talking to them. So in life we have to, learn to get along with a lot of people and their classmates एक ही bench में वो बैठते हैं. So she just suddenly, you cannot ask her to change her bench or, change the section. So यहाँ पे I told him that you yourself have to, have that balance between, allowing your child to make a mistake and also giving her guidance. तो वो दोनों चीजों को बैलेंस करके आपको चलना है. तो he told me that it took some time for him to actually communicate with her. तो एक ही बार में he did not, with a child you cannot vent. Maybe with a partner or with a friend you can still vent कि यार ऐसा ऐसा है. But with a child maybe it's just not possible in one go. So it takes a lot of patience. And I remember he telling me that it took actually months for him to be able to communicate this to her and then allow her to see कि मेरे पापा जो बोल रहे हैं, हाँ मेरे पापा के बात में दम है. So he allowed that much time. So it's like a process, and it demands patience and that whole balance of giving your child guidance and then allowing them to take their decision. So I think that is the story that I remembered and I wanted to share. And it was a very, very nice topic. And thank you so much for hosting it.
Thanks, Prerna. And you brought out very valid points and very real scenarios and very real stories which we keep hearing. And yeah, nowadays children experience what not? Vaping, finding cigarettes, drugs, many things we hear. And it all boils down to this approach. Yeah. Thanks, Prerna. Kilan, you have some point?
No, I just have one question, Tarun. Yeah, it's quite a very good topic, even though it's quite sensitive. And any tips on parenting physically challenged teen children? It's kind of even I will say physically challenged as well as, of course, mentally challenged means in that sense not very extreme, but at least how is there any tips you have? Of course, I know, I understand that trust-based parenting plays a very major or predominant role in this. But again, do you have any tips, additional tips?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question, Kilan. And that's a very, very fine point I wanted to make. Thanks for asking this because this is something I wanted to touch upon also. So, what is a child? Child is also a spiritual being. As a parent, we need to understand that they are soul. And child is also on a soul journey. And they have come equipped with their attributes as well as their challenges. And they will encounter their life journey, any ups and downs, mishaps, breakups, etc. They can tackle it all. And we have to put that bigger trust the trust in universe, trust in child's journey, whatever you want to call the higher, bigger trust to higher power, that is God. And parents have this unwavering trust, irrespective of child's mistakes, that my child can manage, whether the child is doing good in school or not. And when you mention about, physical challenge, I remember, one of our colleague who has a difficult child. And, he gives so much support, so much love to that child. And again, he's a very senior corporate leader. But he spends disproportionate of his personal time with that particular child. He has 3 children. And I have seen that child now. The child is 26-year-old. I have seen the child since last 2008, 16, 17 years. And I have seen how the child has blossomed because of this unwavering love and trust which the parent has given to that child, that special child. And the testimony of that success was a testimonial which the teacher of that child, special child, said in a public ceremony once. She acknowledged that the child gives such mature answers to the teacher when the teacher asks something, that the teacher herself starts disbelieving whether she is hearing is right or not. Because such nuggets coming from that child, she is also equally baffled because she understands that the child is special child. But that is what it does. That is why I said that we have to believe in the higher power, in the higher trust, the bigger trust, we say. And this is what it does. Yeah, Prakash, you can go on.
Yeah. So thanks. So it's a good question, Mr. Akhilan. I think the most important thing I would say is you should never treat a special child as a parent. You should never treat that special child as a special child. The child should never feel that there is sympathy or empathy coming because it is not normally able. The moment that feeling comes, I think the entire process is lost. For any child, the first thing that the child looks at is at its parents. And it probably learns the maximum from its parents. And that is why even when we talk of either trust-based parenting, I think trust for one cannot be less than 100%. It has to be 100%. Anything less than 100% is no trust. So you'll have to fully trust. There is no half trust, number one. Number two, I think you will have to be fully committed. Please don't make the child feel that he or she is specially abled. That's not what it is expecting. That is what the society may express, and the child will slowly start ignoring that, so long as it is not getting that feeling from its parents. And so long as the parents feel that the child is as good as a normal child and it can do everything that is possible to be done, I think half of the battle, I would say, is won. The other half of the battle is working with the child to try and see how the child can navigate through the challenges of life and enjoying that entire process and never feeling bad. that for whatever reasons that, oh, such a child was born to us. I think this is the most critical thing. And I appreciate what Tarun said. I think that's a shining example of how a parent should actually take care of the child. And I can tell you, specially abled children have great abilities. You know, some of their abilities are so spectacular. It's just for us to find out what that ability is, and they can make us feel very proud.
Yeah, thanks, Prakash. Akilan, you
Thank
got
you.
your answer?
Yeah. It's very difficult. Yeah, it's in fact, yeah, as Prakash rightly pointed out, they should not feel that we are giving something special attention to them. Like, but still, we have to, as a human being, yeah, it's very difficult to practice. Yeah, definitely we would definitely somewhere or other we normally show that kind of special thing, but it's again, it's quite sensitive. Yes. Thanks, Prakash.
Thanks, Akilan. Yeah, thanks, Prakash. So I think anybody else has any other point? Because we are already at 8:36. I don't want to hold you any further. We have already overshot our time. So if not, then I would like to conclude here. And I thank you for being such a lovely audience and being so much participated. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tarun. It was a wonderful session.
Thank you, Tarun.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.